What game was it that the guy got so mad at you? That was an early game.
Yeah, that was...
And you ended up being buddies with him.
Just a tribute to
Rod.
the heat stroke.
Yeah, shout out to Rod.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to buy him a beer before the first game this year.
You went over a lot of people that you make really, really mad.
Oh, I'm a likable person.
It just takes time.
I don't know. I still can't stand him.
You're like Costanza. Costanza. All right, well, let's keep going. Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. It is deep into fall camp. We are here under the stars. It's August 14th. It's about 1 billion degrees, but we're outside and getting ready and getting fired up. I'm Steve.
Lucas.
Connor. Jay.
So we got a lot to cover. A lot of things have been happening in practice. We've got a little practice update from Inside Information. We're going to talk about injuries. We're going to talk about some strategy at the linebacker position, which is a strength, which is good to be talking about a strategy on a strength, and some other controversies that have been brewing in the local media and such. So let's start with some practice news. One of the things that has been interesting is that, and I don't know, I guess I've been around long enough, I don't get real hung up on the injury news from a couple standpoints. One, there's always guys that are coming in and they're going to be a backup. And it's just, yeah, you can have a devastating injury early in the season and early in the fall camp. But at the same time, there's a lot of changes that happen, and you forget about how important a player could have been because of other guys that step up. But the other is, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. We never know exactly what to take away from some of this.
It's almost too much information in a time that,
and it's incomplete information.
We're already anxious for what's to come in the next few weeks, and everyone is. I think I'm guilty of it too. Like, I'm itching for information, but at the same time, when I get the information, I'm always left wanting more or wanting to know less.
Well, to see, yeah. He's like, don't even tell me about that.
Like, I don't even need to know about it.
And some of those, it sounds like that's the case. I mean, it sounds like these injuries to some of these players are not as bad. I don't know. Gentry was in pads, and did he actually practice, or was he just in pads the other day?
No, so from what I have read and seen, he was in pads, and he actually participated in practice this week as well.
And they're talking about Anthony's going to be ready for the first game. They're saying.
Awesome. Don't count him out.
Don't count him out, and so you don't know about these guys.
Well, there's hurt and there's injured.
That's right. That's a good point.
I think a lot of the hurt, you get people to sit out. So when you hear reports of they didn't play this much in the scrimmage, or there was actually a scrimmage this morning that we don't have any information on yet, but if they didn't play in the scrimmage, they're usually just hurt. And if they're injured, they let you know they're injured, but they still are so vague on what it was that actually happened.
Right.
And maybe the better way for me to put it is, I don't necessarily hate the information that we're getting out of this stuff. It's the knee-jerk reactions that we're receiving from other people that are
just decide the season's over.
Yeah, or in some cases that, everything is much better than we ever anticipated, etc. It's practice.
Yeah.
And whether it's a scrimmage or practice, it's practice. And
we're talking about practice.
As Allen Iverson, the great AI, would say.
It's just the OG AI.
Yeah, the OG AI. Yeah, none of that robotic stuff. No, I think that's been the most frustrating thing since the Friday scrimmage. Friday night scrimmage, yeah. It's just it's what's crazy though is that you don't really see it seep into the local beat like it has, and we can get into this later when we get into the Jackson Arnold, Dylan Gabriel stuff, but it has seeped pretty wide into some notable figureheads saying some stupid stuff.
I think that's because the anticipation is really high. That people are thinking this team is...
Well, and the stakes are high.
The stakes are high. They know the team is on the verge of getting to a next level. It's good.
Yeah,
we're
on the edge of something that none of us have... The magnitude of what we're going to experience has not been experienced by...
In a long time.
In a long time by by a lot of this fan base.
I mean, over a decade.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is exciting, and that being exciting makes people excited and makes people snap to judgment a lot of the time. So,
let's talk about what we've learned from inside sources at practice, and then we'll transition into the Gibson injury of things we know about that. So Give us a little inside scoop, Connor.
Yeah, so someone who was at practice this week shot over some good information. I'm not going to really this is kind of in a disjointed order, but we'll go through it. So Sawchuk and Bowman, kind of not surprising, looking like at least for now, the kick returners, which I don't hate. I don't necessarily like our running back one and our best safety.
I don't like Billy Bowman
being kick returners.
a kick returner at all, no matter how electric he is.
But at the same time, anybody that I would want back there is gonna be a playmaker on the team.
But it's also different today because you want a guy who makes good decisions in all cases.
Yep.
And today, the fair catch is so important there that
Yep.
they're not necessarily put in harm's way the way that a DeMarco Murray was back in 2007.
Yeah, but you could put a guy like Petaway out there.
Yeah, I
who-
said the argument is you have, for a team like OU, you have so much talent. You can put a young guy back there that makes good decisions. You would think that, and is athletic enough to make a difference.
I don't know. You say that though, and you go back and look at Xavier Worthy when he was a freshman, and Texas was up 28-7 against us, and he makes a dumb decision inside his own 5-yard line on a kickoff and gets the ball stripped out, and we come back and it turns out to be a pivotal point in the game. They're ready until they're not ready, right? Like practicing on a Tuesday is 50 times different than going in front of 80 to 100,000
For
people.
punts, I really will basically take anyone that just catches it and makes a good decision to catch it or let it go. Kickoff returns, that's where I'm more torn because that is a game-changing play. But you're also putting your elite athletes at a high risk of injury.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about
good
it
point.
extensively on
It's
this
a good point.
podcast. I mean,
But that is, I
the
mean,
DeMarco Murray effect.
you return a kickoff, and a lot of times the entire outlook of the game has just shifted.
There's 15 guys on this squad that were the kick returners for their high school within the last 2 or 3 years, whatever age group that they're in now,
Like 30 guys.
maybe 30. I mean, because you're getting the best guy on this high school team was the go-to receiver and, of course, their kick returner. And this guy was the running back, and he's their kick returner.
Yeah, in this group
so,
right here, I would
so
be the kick
you've got
returner.
15 or 20 guys that can literally do that job that aren't a Billy Bowman that you don't want to lose under any circumstances on a kick return.
I mean,
think
Peyton Bowen's an elite returner.
I think that's a great point, and I'm not really sold on disagreeing with it, but to be a Brent Venables devil's advocate, I would say I want a guy who's going to make a reliably good decision there, and maybe that's saying that he's going to tell him and give him the signal that 9 times out of 10 it's fair catch, and that it's really not
But not
even
a kick
an
return.
issue.
Yeah,
kick
yeah,
return.
kick
It's a
return.
fair catch.
kick return too.
I think kick return is if you're standing in the end zone, down it. If you're not in the end zone, run it.
No, I think if you're not in the end zone,
we've seen that not work.
no, I think that's wrong. I think in today's football, where you get the ball on the 25-yard line, you better see something, and you better actually have a play
You
call.
better see a seam.
and have a seam. Otherwise,
or the
take-
arch of the kick.
take the 20. Yeah. Otherwise, you take the
It's
25
situational
and
based,
go.
for sure.
Think about a guy like,
And that's why you want a smart guy who's making that
I
decision.
mean, Alex Ross. He was like second or third string running back, but he was a great kick returner. So, yeah, that's a guy that you don't want to say that you're okay with losing him, but it's not the end of the world if your third string running back goes down on a kick return, where if Billy Bowman goes down on a kick return, yeah, we may
An
have some
All-American.
guys coming up,
But-
but that's a guy that you can't afford to lose.
But Alex Ross was, like you just said, he was a great kick returner. What if he was the best kick returner? You know what I mean? Like, what if that's just what he did?
Well, if he was the starting running back, I wouldn't want him returning kicks.
And I don't disagree with any of that sentiment. And like you said, Lucas, I think there's probably 15 guys that on this team that can go and field punts and kicks. My thing is Brent has made it very clear, is like he's not going to live in the
Fear.
He's not going to live in fear. And it's just like he's preached about in fall camp. We're going to put these guys in real situations where in a real game someone could get hurt, and he's not going to shy away from that. Where
and I think he's going to get a guy that he can trust to make a good decision
Right.
every time. So a guy that returned kicks in high school, he may have been phenomenal, but he was phenomenal because he returned kicks, not because he fair caught the ball.
and because he was returning
And
kicks
you're scared.
against high schoolers.
And you're scared. I would be scared if you get a guy back there who's second string. Otherwise, he's thinking, "This is my chance to make my mark," and he comes out and he gets to the 15-yard line, or he fumbles, or he gets injured, or whatever, and that's a big loss. When you're saying, "Hey, your job was just to get our offense back on the field, not to make a game-changing play."
And I think that's what you're getting with a lot of those returners is it's that hero mentality. It's like, I'm about to be the guy that shifts the whole pace and
Well, then just fair catch
momentum
it
of
every
this
time.
game.
If the 25 is so important, then just fair catch.
And I
every
agree.
time.
I
I think you probably should.
And
most,
I think there's
most
a level.
of the time.
There's a level of coaching that goes into that. And I am very glad we got the coach that we did. I think Nunez was stale. I think the guy from San Diego State with his track record. I think there is a lot to be desired. I want to see some kick returns.
But I'm the
not gonna
first
lie.
to agree with you. I'm really worried about the guys that are premier players in their position being put in harm's way.
Remember the
like that.
complaints we had during the Riley era where we had guys catching it on the 6 or 7 and they would make it to the 18 or 20.
Right.
And we kept saying, it's a rule now where you can, because that's only been a rule, like 6 or 8 years?
Not even that long, yeah.
I mean, not even that long.
5,
That
maybe.
you could just wave your arm and you get the ball at the 25. And we kept saying, hey, you're on the 6 and you're only getting to the 18. That's
Don't do
7
that.
yards you're giving up.
Yep.
And they did the whole season.
Well, even if you get to the 25,
I think the
you
last
took a
season
lot
he
of
was
hits
here,
to get
Yeah,
the same
you
thing
took
you
risks.
get.
You
the
took
last
risks.
season he was here, I think we got better about calling for
Right,
fair catch.
right.
But the first 2 or 3 years, it was ridiculous
Well,
how
Lincoln
often
was also-
we didn't get to 25.
with the exception of like CeeDee Lamb, because CeeDee Lamb was a punt returner,
Right,
and they let him do it.
right.
But pretty much after that, it was just catch
Safe
the
and
ball,
go.
just
And they
catching the
should
ball.
have, because their offense was so good. So I would say if we are returning, actually trying to return a lot of kicks, I will be a lot more on your side and critical of putting those guys in that position. If they're fair catching a lot, I'm going to think, well, what he's doing is he's getting a guy that is only going to take it out when he has a designed kick return.
But the
on.
difference between kick and punt return injury-wise is on a kickoff, you've got all really fast physical guys
running.
running.
Full speed.
On a punt, you've got linemen and usually an H-back or tight end that are all kept in so the
Right.
punt doesn't get blocked. So when you're catching a punt, you're more free to take off because there's only 4 or 5 guys
Right.
coming at you as opposed to 11, well, take out the kicker, 10 guys coming at you on a kickoff return.
Right.
So I don't mind having a Billy Bowman maybe on a punt return, but on a kick return, you see way more injuries on a kick return because of the difference
That's
of
why the NFL changed
type
their-
of athlete.
Yeah, the
Changing
only
their kickoff.
reason I want to see a Billy Bowman back there is because they know something about his decision making that is totally superior, which is my way of saying I really don't want to see a stupid decision made on kick return, or I'm going to be a lot more critical there than in another area, because you're risking a really good guy and the risk reward is not real conducive.
Well, and
to
there
making
may
that
be,
decision.
and I think there's a lot of logic in what we say, and then I think there's a gap into what is reality, not just with OU, but what is holistic in college football. I think across most teams, you're going to see superstars lined up on the goal line to return kicks. Like it's not,
And
I
they
don't
do
think
want
it's-
that guy. They want that guy that's going to inspire fear.
Yeah.
So that you really, as a team kicking the ball, you have to think twice about what you're
Right.
doing. I mean, think about it from the standpoint of, as a fan, watching us kick off and Worthy's back there, or somebody that's a real threat. You're aware of those threats. Remember the years of Kansas State having a big threat, and you're really thinking, okay, be careful about kicking to Lockett or whoever you're kicking to.
Or Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
And really be aware of that from the standpoint of you can't just willy-nilly go up and kick the ball and think everything's fine. You've got to have a real good, and you want them to have a really good, well-thought-through plan, which may cause them to kick safe. And so basically it's a game theory type of situation, whereas if the team kicking to OU says, oh, God, both of those guys can take it to the house, everybody out there can block well for him, you tell your kicker, you kick it so that he's going to fair catch it, and we'll take our chances on defense.
Yeah.
And you basically just come to an agreement of we're going to start at the 25-yard line.
And on the flip side of that, and sorry, I know this is going a little long, but on the flip side, it's almost like if we do have those 10 to 15 guys that can do it, not all those 10 to 15 guys are going to be the main guys in the game, defensively or offensively. Go give one of them a chance to be a star on special teams so that you're not risking an injury.
Now, what
right?
about Eli Bowman?
Now, they're talking about
Eli
him,
Bowman.
actually. They're talking about him playing a part.
I mean,
as
I can
well.
remember watching a little bit of him in high school because he was on the same team with Jackson Arnold. And
Literally
he can run back kicks.
Every corner and every wide receiver and running back on the team can do.
Right.
So not Gibson, and we'll
you
talk
put-
about that in a minute.
Maybe Taylor Tatum's a guy that, he's the 3rd or 4th string running back. Put him out there and let him run it back.
Yeah.
I mean, he's lightning fast.
So back to some more notes. Quarterback play. Again, this is post-scrimmage practice. Jackson Arnold looked really good. Said in command of the offense. No turnovers to note. Again, this was a pretty condensed viewing, so from what he saw, nothing to note from a turnover perspective. Was really good under pressure. The D-line was still bringing a lot of heat, but he responded well. Saw some of Hawkins, said Hawkins ran great, except for the fact that he was running for his life most of the time. But was really good under pressure, had a lot of good spin and zip on the ball. So I think Hawkins, and from everything I'm reading as well, sounds like he's actually solidifying himself in that 2 role. Whereas I think a lot of us,
Let's kinda
myself
suck for
included,
Thompson.
thought it was Casey.
That's a good thing.
I will
That
argue
is a good
that
thing.
I will say that is dependent upon the opponent.
In the
And the
situation.
In a
score.
situation.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I think you're exactly right. I think if you have me choosing
If we have a 10-point lead
Yeah.
going into the fourth quarter,
against Tennessee,
Thompson's in.
yep.
And Venables came out, and so real quick on Thompson, said Thompson's performance was pretty vanilla. Definitely showed the experience, but did not look like the mobility that he used to have is there. And obviously, with the injuries and everything else, it's not going to be. Brent did come out today or yesterday post-practice and say they're not putting Casey in a bunch of situations where he has to run. So it's not that he can't do it. It's just
They don't want him
that
to.
they don't want him to.
Is there a player in college football history that's ever played snaps at 3 of the biggest schools in college football history? Because he went Texas,
Not from that blue blood perspective.
Texas,
no way.
Nebraska, Oklahoma.
Right.
That's a crazy resume.
There was the
And
kid
the-
that went Notre Dame to Bama last year, but I don't think he went. I don't think he was anywhere before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the only thing you discount there is to say Nebraska isn't Nebraska of old, but as far as a name, that's a heck of
Yeah.
a name.
3 blue
And I don't
bloods.
think there's anybody. I mean,
And played against his current team twice for 2 different teams.
How about that?
Oh, yeah.
How about that?
Started games
That's pretty
against
wild.
the current team. He's
There's
on for 2
just
different teams.
no-
There's
and-
no way that's possible.
And then layer in the fact that his father was a star at the school
the
he's at
school.
now.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
all of that is such a heck of a story. Any more
Um,
news?
Yeah, just I'll try to plow through this. Running back, Sawcheck, nothing really noteworthy. Ran with the ones. Barnes, as camp rolls on, still a lot of hype. Says looks just physically demanding. Had the one explosive run of the afternoon that he was watching. Wide receiver room, Farouk had the one. Deep ball connection, sounded like they were running some situational stuff in the short game. But on the one deep ball that was thrown, Farouk was there. Name to watch, and it's not just from these notes, but it's from boards I'm on and everything I'm reading. J.J. Hester seems like he's someone who's breaking out and that they're really going to start leaning on. A redshirt senior. I didn't realize that. So a redshirt senior, that's finally going to maybe get his shot because of the Jaden Gibson
Yeah,
injury.
he played quite a bit at Mizzou,
A star at Mizzou. in
and
COVID
then
year.
broke his foot, re-broke his foot,
Yeah.
and he's just never really
He's
been
now
healthy.
finally back to quote-unquote 100%. Tight end room, Sharp looks like the real deal. Says that acceleration, speed is bar none the best in the group. Says with the ball he can turn corners up really well and get up the field. No notes on Roberts. Said Helms didn't look good. Passes dropped that shouldn't be dropped.
That's the kind of thing that makes you not see the field the
Yeah,
entire year.
and also, and again, a guy that's just been barred with injuries that I don't think, I mean, I posted something today. I think we've just kind of developed past him. Like, there's just, this kind of, your time was here. Unfortunately, you were injured, and we have to go a different route. And he limped off at the end of practice as well. I'm not sure if it was serious or anything. I haven't seen anything come out on that. Not a lot of notes on the offensive line, just still trying to get their groove. Defensive line, PJ looks like he's dominant, which we need him to be. Said physically dominant in the scrimmage and in the drills. David Stone, also someone to note, said was getting in the backfield consistently, which I don't even think David Stone's going to be on the 2 deep in the interior defensive line, so that's something to note. Linebacker, Kanik actually ran with the 2s in this practice, which is interesting. Kobe McKenzie got a lot of run as well, rotating in and out with the 1s and 2s.
Well, let's talk about. Go ahead. I'm
Nope,
sorry.
that's about it. So,
Tell me, give me some medical information, Jay, about Gibson, and then let's talk about linebackers because that's a good transition with what Connor laid out there.
All right, so with Gibson, it sounds like, they always put out the lower leg injury, and the stuff that's leaked out it sounds more like it's a patella tendon injury.
That's what I thought from my medical expertise.
Yes, and not like an ACL. And so on a patella tendon injury, the recovery isn't as long, but the physical therapy and loss of explosion and power and different stuff is greater. So basically, in layman's term, it's more of an unpredictable rehab, and it seems to hinder their athletic ability when they do return from it.
I'm blanking, but it seems like there's a guy, it may have been an OU guy, who did suffer that kind of an injury, and it did really set him back. And I'm trying to remember who it is. I'm sorry for bringing it up, but I can't even remember who it is. But I remember that, and it being just something that just took him down a notch. And so I hope the best for Gibson. Hopefully it's not something that lingers and prevents him from being what he can be. But that's a little bit, there's a bright side, negative side to that, it sounds
Is he
like.
a junior?
Yeah.
I think he's a true junior, right?
Yeah, he is. He never redshirted.
So he could be the kind of guy that finds it. I mean, maybe he keeps his explosiveness and his everything that he needs, but
So
if he loses a touch, then maybe he leans on the fact that he's really tall and can run good routes otherwise,
And get his skill set up,
understands-
get his
yeah,
catching up and everything else. I mean, he could claim a medical redshirt this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or
So-
did regular redshirt?
Or it's regular,
Yeah.
right? You don't have to claim a medical.
He still have 2 years left.
Yeah, so
for those that don't know, your patella tendon is at the bottom of your kneecap. It attaches your kneecap to your tibia, and it keeps, besides just connecting bones as you have to other bones, it keeps it from shifting left and right.
Stability.
And so it's a pretty important.
Thing for a receiver to
It's a
have.
pretty important thing in general. Yeah.
How many of those have you seen in your career?
We fix quite a bit. It's usually just like someone stepping off a curb funny. It's just like a really strange injury.
Right.
We really don't hear a lot about it
An athlete.
in athletes.
Yeah.
I'm
I want to say
not sure why that is.
some basketball players have it every now and then.
I wonder if he got hit wrong. or
Yeah.
What
and,
happened? on the play.
there's several different things that can happen. The tendon itself could just detach from the bone, and they just have to put that back down. Sometimes, Mother Nature's attachment there is so strong that the bone itself kind of chips off, and you have to just. That's kind of good because
You
when
glue
you're
the chip back on.
yeah, because when you're trying to attach soft tissue to bone, it takes longer for that natural process to heal versus just bone on bone. So maybe in a good way, if the bone did break a little bit, the bone heals the bone a lot quicker, and you've got that natural attachment of soft to bone still intact.
I knew there was a reason we invited Jay on the podcast
Yeah.
so long ago.
It's been, 4 years, and he's finally contributed.
Finally.
Nice. Well, let's get some
But
more.
either way, he's out for the season. We just have to hope
as
that
anticipated.
you just have to hope that physical therapy goes well, and
This could have been in somebody's career
and
15 years ago,
Other guys step up.
but now it's not as bad. I mean,
Yeah.
ACLs used to be a year and a half recovery and all that kind of stuff.
and they never were the same.
And
Yeah.
they never were the same. And now you've got guys like Adrian Peterson that comes back 8 months from an ACL, and he's as explosive as he was before. I mean,
yeah, it's amazing how
the
Like,
rehab's
he's the
gotten
Rush
better.
come along.
The surgeries have gotten better. The rehab's gotten better.
Well, that deer antler spray has something to do with that.
You spray it on the bone.
Yeah.
Before you sew it back
while
up.
it's opened up.
I'm sure they do a lot of that under the knife there.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what else you can contribute, Jay. You've got some ideas on linebacker and some things for us to talk about. Talk about your thoughts on linebacker.
so we kind of touched on it last season where Kanik just was underperforming, right? And so what the coaching staff did is they moved Stutzman out of position so that Kip Lewis could come in.
out of his natural best position,
Right. And so
which was Will.
yeah, and so what we're looking at now is I guess it's not as bad as it was last year, because I think Kip Lewis and Lewis Carter or even a Kobe McKenzie are better options than what we had last year. But I guess the main question is, do you keep Stutzman at his preseason first-team All-American, according to ESPN?
Yeah, ESPN just released nationwide All-American status.
Right.
He is first-team All-American.
So do you keep him there and then put in the next best player at the other linebacker position? Or do you move him and he's not quite as good, but you bring in, somebody else to play the will?
And you're presuming he's not as good at that position.
Right, he might be. He could be an All-American at Mike Orwell,
right?
Which we don't know.
Right.
They know that, obviously.
Right.
But
May
it'll
not
be
know
interesting to see. I think we'll know right off the get-go what the coaches think. And
Like from the very first play of the game.
yeah, I think some of it.
Not if we're on offense.
Yeah.
Now, some of it might be what we talked about a little bit at dinner. How much of it is the coach doing what's best for the team? How much of it is up to Stutzman himself for his own draft stock, for his own comfortability? Who does he maybe gel with better, right? Maybe even though he might be slightly out of position and not quite as good, but he really, really gets along with Lewis Carter or communicates well.
Right.
So do they go with that route? But I think our answer at Tennessee, we'll know by then what the coaches have.
I think our coaches have known what they want to do since the end of last season, and I'll be shocked if the first defensive play it's not Kip Lewis and Danny Stutzman out there. And I say that, I'm not saying that it's like some easy transition. I'm not someone who spent time on the gridiron to know the differences between Mike and Will. But if it's something where they're saying Kip is too good to not have on the field, Danny's too good and too smart not to have on the field, if they spend all offseason, all spring and fall to say, Danny, we want you at the mic and we need you to learn it, Danny Stutzman's your guy to go and learn it, in my opinion.
Well, he played Mike for 2 years before last year moved him to the will.
So,
It could very well be, we might be like way overthinking this, and it could just be situational on opponent.
Right.
It could be a run-heavy team. It could be, a pass-heavy team.
Right.
And then you move them accordingly because there's definitely different responsibilities between the two.
Right.
And or, blitz packages, who you want. Like, I would think you want Kip in a blitz situation
For
over
speed and
Danny.
power.
100%
Right.
of the time.
Does
Yeah.
it make a difference who's playing cheetah
Same with
at
coverage.
that time too?
Yeah. So
Like maybe you want these three guys in there, and Danny's going to play the mic on this set because McCullough's cheetah, or he's on this set because Darby's a cheetah. Then,
yeah, it could
then
be a
you
deal
just
where
decide, he
Well,
moves,
it could
he
be
moves around based on personnel at that third position that's essentially being a Sam linebacker, but they're calling it a cheetah in a 4-3 or something like that.
But I also hope it's not that predictable. Like, I hope it's like we have two guys out there that can go do multiple things where run or pass, we've got guys who can go get in the backfield and defend in coverage. And I know,
Well,
yeah, I don't think just because Kip's out there that you just have to assume he's the blitzer, right?
no,
Like,
I know.
I don't
I'm
think
just saying,
it's that.
like, an extreme situation, like, Lucas, I agree. And I think it will come down situationally a lot, especially with the depth of the linebacker group. Like, I think there's guys in that group, notably, I mean, I think Kobe McKenzie's going to play a pretty big role in this team. And it's not a guy who's seen a lot of snaps, just like
if you're
safety.
playing a run-heavy team, McKenzie might be in there a lot.
Yeah. So,
well, I think it's clear when you look at what EA Sports has shown us. Danny can't cover and
He cannot cover.
cannot cover.
That's right. If
he's basically the third choice at that point.
if the other teams have been playing the game,
Jaron Koenig is going to
If
be.
you
yeah,
just run-
Canic's the
yeah,
honey badger or
just
something out there.
just run some shallow drag routes, some crossing routes over the middle, and Danny will be 5 to 7 yards behind.
And let's not write Canic off because
Nope.
we saw the jump Danny made between year 1 and year 2 in Venable's defense. So as much as we bashed on Canic in coverage for sure and getting lost sometimes on like running back flare out passes and stuff like that of him
A step late,
not getting to where he needed to be quick enough, that this jump in the next year in the Venables defense might have done Canic so much good that he's the true second team guy, and you run McKenzie and Canic out there.
And I think the Koenig overlook is going to be nothing but beneficial for him. Like, it's no secret that he
Lost a spot.
lost a spot, and it's also, there's no way that he doesn't know that people are saying the things they're saying, myself included. Like, I'm like, hey, let's put Kanik at fullback. Like, Kanik's not a fullback. Kanik knows he's not a fullback. Go earn your spot and get on the field at linebacker.
Right.
So, and again, we've talked about this so much. It's such a good problem to have right now in that group.
Yeah, we're not used to it.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's that group is so deep. It's the wide receivers of the defense, essentially, in terms of depth. Like, there's just guys you can go to. So, as long as they stay healthy,
I think that'll be what we'll see, and I like your idea about the flexibility. And this is an unfair comparison, although they've made the comparison at least in the marketing. If you remember back to Brian Bosworth, it didn't matter where Brian Bosworth lined up on the field. He was going to be a difference maker. And so he could line up in any position at linebacker, and he was going to make a difference there. In fact, a lot of times he did things that were just unbelievable because they said, wherever he was lining up, it didn't matter. He was blitzing in a completely different way and getting all the way to the quarterback. And so if you've got a guy that's a difference maker like that, and you surround him with talent, and what was his name? Paul Migliazzano, who ran with Bosworth, who was a very, very solid second best linebacker on the field. And he was a guy that Bosworth could rely on and everyone else could rely on. And so if you've got those guys in is it Carter Lewis Carter, and McKenzie and everybody else, then you've got the confidence to know you can run a scheme that highlights Danny, and the other guys are going to do what they need to do. Or maybe Danny's the guy who's almost the distraction. He's the guy that everybody is keying in on, and then McKenzie off the edge or something is completely disrupting the play. And that is a great position to be in. I think that all of this dilemma is almost a false dilemma, or it's a great dilemma to have of we've got 4 guys who potentially can be great starters. We got to figure out who are the 3 that are going to be in there at these different positions at different times. I don't know if it's much of a trade-off when you look at your draft stock and everything else to say, hey, look, you're going to be drafted as long as you succeed. And now,
let's go make plays.
In 2024, you're going to be able to make plays, whereas in 23 and definitely 22, you weren't able to make plays the way you can make plays. It was a much more critical decision to get a guy into a position where he's going to get the stats and going to get the highlights, because there was win and lose then. Now it's kind of win and win.
Yeah, you could actually add more teams to your draft board of
right.
For
flexibility.
this guy plays everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, and what helps, something another luxury we're experiencing right now is all these guys we're talking about have had multiple years in the system that we're running now. It's not something that they're...
And it's not an Alex Grinch system.
Yeah, exactly. They're not getting...
That's a strong point right there.
Yeah,
you call that a system? I don't know.
Speed D, Steve. They made T-shirts for it.
That's true. There were T-shirts made.
They're not getting exposed for the first time. They're not getting comfortable in their second year. They're third-year veterans who have been in it and know what to do. And I think everything we're seeing coming out of practice and all this stuff is speaking to that experience. Like, there's a reason our defense is dominating the offense in a lot of these cases.
It's a great problem to
depth
have.
there is incredible. And to be able to rotate in depth and talented depth on top of Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman and Kip Lewis.
Yeah, bring in your 2s and not have a drop-off.
Yeah. And if the drop-off's there, it's nominal at best.
And I feel like we've run a more vanilla defense the last 2 years, whereas you watch those Clemson Venables era teams, the blitzing was unique and came from all over the place, and we really haven't seen that the first 2 years. Whereas now, in some of the practice reports, it sounds like blitzing is more often than we've blitzed in the past, and that's attributed to third year in the system. These guys know what they're doing. When one guy blitzes, the other guy knows where he needs to be to not give up a big play. And when you can filter in some more blitzing opportunities than we've had, you create more havoc. We were leading the country in turnovers through like 2/3 of the season last year, right?
Yeah.
Interceptions, tip balls, fumbles. And if you can add that to your repertoire because you've got more experienced guys and just overall better strength and conditioning, and you can send guys that actually get to the quarterback as opposed to getting held up in the line and a blitz was worthless, that makes a huge difference on what your defense can do, creating chaos.
One, it opens up the opportunity for the linemen as well. I mean, that's a big concern that I've seen of people saying, well, we haven't had someone who can get to the quarterback. It's been a concern of mine. We haven't had ends who are getting the quarterback. We haven't had interior defensive linemen who are getting the quarterback and finishing plays to get sacks. If you're able to blitz from other positions and bring pressure, it's only going to make it easier for those guys to go and get those stats. So that's where my hope lies, and I think that's, for this defense, that'd be the biggest thing for me this year is, can we go finish plays in the backfield? Because while we had some good tackles,
We had a lot of pressures last
had a
year.
lot of pressures, did not have the sacks that would correlate to that, right? So
I mean, all you have to do is go back to the 2000s when you had a Torrance Marshall, a Teddy Lehman, Ryan Reynolds, and then you went to Curtis Lofton, and you went to Rufus Alexander.
Yep.
We all remember those names because those guys caused havoc at the linebacker position.
And they had supporting cast helping them cause
And
havoc.
outside of, we had Travis Lewis for a year or two that was good at that. But, I mean,
And they had
Obo had
Stryker,
one good season. Stryker had 2 really good seasons. But outside, since then, we haven't had anybody do that.
But we haven't had DBs who can compete on the outside when the pressure's brought, not to get burned and leave someone open to bail out. So,
And we haven't had a defensive line who could apply consistent pressure and be occupying everybody on that line. I look at it as a situation of, if anybody runs empty on us, they may be really opening. You better find that hot route fast, because we might be in that backfield before you know it.
Yeah.
And you got one look, and you better make sure it's there. And
We better
now
hope
we
it's
have
not
the
the
guys to
Gentry side.
rely on
Yeah.
to close that down.
Right.
So I got a lot of hope all around.
Has there been any talk about Darby?
Dolby.
Dolby?
Yeah,
Dolby?
just as being
Just say he's been really good.
Because at the end of like the last 4 or 5 games of the year, he was awesome.
No, I think he's the go-to.
And
I
I,
think-
haven't
I think
heard
Brent-
hardly anything about him in the camps.
Brent Early said that, if he continues to play the way to build off of last season, that he's essentially like an incredible player. Like, they are super high.
Oh, that's great, because that's a guy that can actually blitz and get to the quarterback. He's a guy that can stop the run on the edge,
And he's fast
and
enough in
he's
coverage.
not bad in coverage.
He's fast enough in coverage, yeah.
Oh yeah, McCullough is definitely behind Dolby.
Yeah.
The only question mark is, if you've got to get Peyton Bowen on the field, like, you just have to get him on the field, right? Does he take some stabs from Dolby and accept? But again, another good problem to have.
I think that's
or give
more,
RSJ a breather and
I
put,
think that's more of, I think
Bowen in there.
Peyton's going to be hard to keep off the field at safety, in my opinion.
I thought he
think-
was last year,
Yeah.
and they still kept him off the field a little more than I thought.
To RSJ's credit, RSJ had an incredible back half of last season where he made some great plays. I just think that, again, is another room where you have just dudes. Like, it's and you have to pick two.
Well, the depth is so important, because just like we talked about in the last pod on the offensive side with Sermon, and when he could come in fresh. So if you'll remember, I think it was against Oklahoma State when they scored on a play where the quarterback actually ran it in, and we had subbed out. This is a couple years back, but we had subbed out, and the backups were so weak. Now the subs are going to be talented people.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to worry so much about what the second string and whatever is coming in to relieve somebody. You've got an ability to run somebody in there either on a third down situation or a second down situation, and then know that if they make the play, well, that's just great. If they don't, and you're in a third down and third and short, then you're putting your ones back out there, and they're strong, and it's not the same as, wow, if we can't get the stop here, we're going to be 2nd and 5, and it's a guaranteed first down.
I mean, the guys we're talking about on the second team are first teamers from about 2016 till 2022,
Yep.
essentially.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
All those
easily.
second string guys are
Easily.
starters for 8 seasons.
And that's raw starters beyond or beside the fact that you're going to add in the fact that they're so much better coached today. And so it's not just a talented person, it's a talented person who knows what the heck he's doing.
IQ, yeah.
The football IQ, that know the play, know his role, rely on his teammates. I mean, if you want me to start drinking the Kool-Aid, the defense is the area where I am just I'll be very critical if we're not really good, because there's no excuse. We should be phenomenally good on defense.
Yeah, this will be something we can talk about maybe the week before the first game, but the first 3 games of the season, what were y'all's expectations for how many points we give up?
Oh my goodness, very few.
It should be under 21 points or 28 points, 3 games combined.
Like starters?
Yeah, starters.
Or against
Starters.
defense. True against defense, like and a kick return or
if you're
some
up
busted
42-0
play.
or something against
Yeah.
Temple and your third stringers are in there,
That's
maybe give up a touchdown.
I lost this line. I bet way over last year, basically underestimating what this defense is. And Steve, to your point, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I think anything more than
like 20, 28 points.
I would say 28
over 3
points.
games.
I'd say 28 points is.
Now Houston could be
how to
improved,
happen.
but just coaching aspect,
Right.
going from Holgerson to Fritz, but I don't know how good the offense is going to be.
Yeah, how much talent do they actually have to work with and all of that? Well, speaking of talent, so there was a little blow up on the radio, and it's hitting some of the social media and some of the boards. We've always been, I'm going to try to describe our views on Dylan Gabriel and Jackson Arnold.
You could say we were first.
We were first to say Jackson Arnold is the primary. And we were high on Jackson, down on Dylan. And we like Dylan.
The ceiling.
The ceiling was high, was low on Dylan. The ceiling was high on Jackson Arnold. And we saw all that. We've got a view on that. There's some that are expressing a different view.
Some very notable
Notable
media
people.
members.
And I would say it's coming from a couple different angles. One is people that are just quick to criticize Jackson Arnold in general. And that would be against the potential second-string competition of Hawkins and everything else. And then others looking at it as if we made a critical strategic mistake in letting Dylan Gabriel go. And I think that is just completely foolish. I think that when you look at what we're trying to achieve, where we're progressing, what we want in a multi-year goal standpoint, keeping Dylan Gabriel would have been a big mistake.
It would have been detrimental.
It would have been very detrimental.
In my
And one of the things I heard, which to me is complete nonsensical reasoning, is to say, well, what if Dylan Gabriel goes out and wins the Heisman Trophy? He's favored to win the Heisman Trophy. Well, that is so beside the point, because that is assuming he would be a Heisman Trophy winning candidate at Oklahoma. And there's nothing you can assume about that, even if he wins the Heisman at Oregon. And that's like saying if you foul a guy and he goes to the free throw line and he misses the free throw, oh, that was a good foul. No, the foul was good or bad based on your expected value of when you made the decision to foul the guy. If you made a good foul, it is irrespective of the fact if he makes the free throw or not. You're saying, I would rather foul you in basketball than let you get a shot at a wide open layup or something. And so I remember back to a mom that was watching high school basketball my brother used to play, and she would always cheer when the guy would miss the free throw after her son had fouled the guy. Good foul. No, it wasn't a good foul. It was a stupid foul, and he sent a guy to the free throw line and he just happened to miss. So if Dylan Gabriel happens to win the Heisman, wonderful for him. But that's not to say that it wasn't a good strategic decision by OU to say we're gonna move on to the next guy who's going to position us best to win in the long term, and maybe just do as good. I would argue do as good in 2024 as you would expect Dylan Gabriel to do. What do you guys think?
I mean, I sent it last night, and I still hold to the statement. I think the sentiment is so misplaced with the people who are saying we made a mistake, or, it would have been better to have Dylan here.
Besides the fact that after one scrimmage.
One scrimmage, yeah, that's a whole other story.
Well, and the turnovers the bowl game.
Yeah, and not to mention Jackson's going against the ones, and Michael Hawkins is not. And we can get into that. But with the Dylan Gabriel specifically, what I said last night is you still run into the fact that you have to break in a fresh quarterback at some point.
At some point.
So whether it's Jackson Arnold this year, or it would have been Michael Hawkins next year because Jackson would have left had Dylan stayed, I'd take Jackson Arnold all day. Breaking that in, and then giving Michael Hawkins 2 years of experience behind Arnold to come in as a junior. And it just makes no sense.
If they made a mistake, it was in not playing Jackson Arnold more and sooner last year.
Exactly. And I think that goes back to our argument of everything considered, hindsight's 2020. I would like to have given Jackson Arnold half of last season would have been incredible. Given him half the games, I don't think your results are much different, to be honest. I really don't. In some cases, they may be better.
I mean, I think you can beat Kansas and OSU.
I think you can.
Yep.
Well,
So-
any
Maybe,
result
maybe
that
he
didn't
doesn't
lead
come
you-
back and beat Texas on the final drive
Right.
like Gabriel
Any
did.
result that doesn't lead you to the playoffs.
But maybe he doesn't
these
stay in that
days-
position because Dylan Gabriel did not play well in the second and third quarter of that game.
No.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's so.
Also, the offensive coordinator was horrible.
and again, and
Got to get our Jeff Lebby jack.
Absolutely. That's fair.
Speaking
no.
of,
no, it is.
Kel Gundy today on the radio said with 100% factual certainty that he was told that if Jeff Lebby was still here, Gabriel was still here. That they would have kept Gabriel even losing Arnold, which was the debate on the radio, and that was 100% accurate according to Kel Gundy on the radio today.
So, Jay, we cut you off. What were you going to say?
No idea.
Oh, I'm sure it was a great point. Nothing against Dylan Gabriel except the fact that he's got a ceiling and we've seen it. The guy can't throw deep. He refuses to throw over the middle consistently. He is not going to be the difference maker that you need against top defenses.
He's a seasoned quarterback with a bunch of talent around him at Oregon. That's the reason he's getting the hype he is. I beg the question, does he get the same hype going into the SEC with the weapons that we have?
No.
I don't think he does.
No.
He is not preseason Heisman favorite.
And I think it's
here.
I think it's a relatively even comparison.
And it's a league thing. I don't think it's a team thing.
Right.
Yeah, because if he went to Mississippi State with Lebby, or he goes to Auburn, or he goes
Or
to
even
Florida,
if he had gone to Texas with their schedule.
yeah. Well, I mean, they're stacked at quarterback.
Well, no. But yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Like
the schedule
if he goes to
matters.
Auburn, he's not a Heisman candidate. I mean, if he goes to Mississippi State, he's not a Heisman candidate. But he's going to Oregon, who has arguably the number one and number two wide receiver core in the country.
And I think they only play two
and
top
a
25
very
teams.
soft,
Right.
very soft.
Whereas
schedule.
we have 6 ranked teams or 6 top 14,
not 14 teams.
6 top 14 teams on our schedule.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be the answer.
He wouldn't, and he wouldn't inspire the same confidence. Jackson Arnold wouldn't still be here. He would have seen the writing on the wall, and he would have moved on. And we'd be back in that same boat that you described, Connor, with Hawkins next year, which is even a more difficult position to be in. And that's in year 2 in the SEC when everything else should be coming together and being as good or better than what it is in 2024.
Yeah, your team that you're working with next year is going to be better than the one you're working with right
But look at it in hindsight. So if I were to tell you back in 2018 when, 2017, when you got Baker Mayfield to return, and I were to tell you that the backup, Kyler Murray, is going to be a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, that he is going to be a absolutely top 5 quarterback all time in a single season, would you have been disappointed then to see Baker Mayfield come back? No, you wouldn't, because you're looking at a true talented player who you can count on. Dylan Gabriel is not Baker Mayfield. It is not the same thing. And so that, I think that in a lot of the minds of those like Sam Mays who's presenting this argument are seeing it that way, as if you're talking about a guy like a Baker Mayfield coming back. And even granted the fact that Kyler Murray's that good, you want the seasoned guy who's that talented. Dylan Gabriel is seasoned, but he's not that talented. He's not that good.
And I'd rather be in the position we're in. And as much as my initial reaction is to get angry or frustrated with the things that are being said, it's the same thing that's being said about this team as a whole nationally, right? It's the low expectations. It's the 7-5s and the 8-4s of the world, which again, 8-4 are out of the question. But at the same time, I'd much rather be in Jackson's position where he has everything to prove with nothing in his past than being in Dylan Gabriel's position where it's, you're the Heisman hopeful, you're on Oregon, if you mess up, it's on you.
And the other thing that there's 2 really good points. I'll let Lucas present his. It's a great point with Dylan Gabriel as a shortcoming. But the other thing that Dylan Gabriel may be up against that people aren't appreciating is the fact that he wanted to go pro this past year and couldn't. His draft stock was very low. He has a lot to prove, but he also has a lot to play safe for. So that's a guy who's got some bad incentives that don't necessarily align with what you're trying to achieve. And I would think that Brent is saying, I want a guy out there who's going for it. And Dylan Gabriel, one of the criticisms we've always leveled at him is that he plays it safe. And I would think that he would play it even safer in another year to get through the year and have good numbers, not throw those interceptions, and try to get drafted. And that's not what it's going to take to compete and actually win. We need a guy who will go out and win games, not just play it safe. And talk about something else, Lucas, where might be playing it safe.
One of the other things was he had 30 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He was 4th in the country in QBR. But also, we literally saw in person, like you said earlier, the scaredness to throw it over the middle and wasn't accurate enough on deep balls. How many underthrows did he have? I mean, it was rare for him to overthrow a guy running 50 yards down the field, but it was very common for an underthrow and a guy having to come back and try to make a play on it. But a fact that I didn't really hear anybody talk about was he missed the end of the TCU second half for a concussion. He missed the entire Texas game with a concussion.
Yeah.
That same year.
Yeah.
So that was year 1.
Right.
Last year, going in
Second half of BYU.
going into the first, at the very end of was it the last play of the first half?
Yep.
It was right at the end. Yeah.
It was
Right at
very
the
end of the first half. He got nailed and was loopy coming
And
off
he was
the field.
running the ball, which is something we want a quarterback to do.
Right. And then so Jackson had to play the second half. So what we've seen in the history of Oklahoma trainers is they take concussions super serious. They're known throughout college football as being the most delicate with that affliction of a concussion. So he's one hard tackle of his head bouncing off the ground away from OU telling him, you're never going to step on the field again. We've seen it with
Calcaterra.
Grant Calcaterra. We've seen him retire offensive linemen for different reasons, literally like in their sophomore year, like, you're not going to play football for us anymore. So it's happened too many times in the past that this would have, it's all hypothetical, but if he takes one hard shot out of 12 games, that he's not going to step on the field again, more than likely with his 3rd concussion over a 3-year period.
And that's just here.
And that's just here.
Not sure what happened.
Not to mention he missed an entire season at UCF with a knee injury. I
Broken
think.
Shoulder. I think it was a shoulder.
Oh, I thought it was a leg. Yeah,
Oh, was
Was it a leg?
Was it collarbone
It was
maybe?
a collarbone, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So
You're right.
I mean, you hate to label guys injury prone, but when the statistics say he's missed a full season plus 2 games, I guess, half and then a full game and a half, that you are a little worried that 3rd game of the year he gets injured against Tulane, and next thing you know, Jackson Arnold's gone because you chose to go with Dylan Gabriel, and now you have a true freshman that was in high school last year as your starting quarterback going into Tennessee, Texas, Auburn, Missouri,
Yeah,
back to back to
pick
back.
your game.
Yeah, you don't want that scenario.
And that goes back to him playing it safe. That might be why he plays it as safe as he does, because it's going. And I don't blame the kid. I understand it. If you're saying I want to get to the next level, and I don't get to the next level if I have a major injury, your tuck and run is going to be different than someone who is not playing with that cloud over his head.
And there's zero chance you get drafted if the college you're at makes you medically retire.
Or even
in your 3rd season,
or even if
whatever.
you just are
Especially as a
injured
quarterback.
and come back.
Right.
And-
And it's not like he has the measurables anyway to go be
Right.
an NFL starter for one thing.
So he could be.
He might be
could
Chase Daniel, can hold the clipboard.
Right.
But Chase Daniel had a heck of a lot better
I
arm
don't
than
think he
Dylan
has that
Gabriel.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't
No.
mean to be so critical, but
We've seen his
sound it.
we've seen his
He
ceiling.
would be mediocre all the way through until the point that he gets replaced, and that might be against a Missouri. And the meat of your season, and you may actually be playing for something at that point, and now you're throwing a true freshman who, again, like you say, was in high school last year, into the mix when you're trying to salvage a season. That's just not a good mix of what you're trying to achieve.
And then the other facet of this is they're raving on Hawkins in practice, and Arnold threw a couple interceptions, let's say, but also he's going against a great defense as we think it's going to be. Hawkins is going against 2nd-team defense, but then also when you look just
And
back,
it's not that he's just like lighting it up. or
Yeah.
something. He's just.
but when you
playing
look
well.
back at the high school recruiting, and I know you can't always go off of the numbers, but Jackson Arnold wins the Elite 11. Hawkins didn't. Hawkins was a 4-star. Jackson Arnold's a 5-star and the #1 quarterback in a class that included Manning and
playing in a tough
other
league
guys.
of high school.
right, yeah, playing at 6A like
Texas
the
football.
Texas football, not parochial school Louisiana like Manning was, and so you're willing to let the number one quarterback in his class go to hope that the 4-star kid as a redshirt freshman next year can lead you into the SEC. It doesn't work like that for me.
No, I think you're right.
And last point, and something I really hadn't thought about until just now, Dylan Gabriel's worked with the same offensive coordinator for most of his career in Jeff Lebby, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying he can't go learn Oregon's system or anything else, but there's going to be a curve. You're working with different guys. You're working with different coaches, everything else. It's not just this snap your finger, he's used to everything. Not to mention losing Big Ten defenses, right? So, I mean, Big Ten and Big 12, big difference. I mean, whether it's Iowa, who can't score points but can play defense, or the Ohio States of the world.
Michigan won a national championship last year.
It's not going to be this walk in the park
Yeah,
that he's just going to have this immediate success against.
that's back to my point of let's get over the fact that he was a guy who had good statistics in the Big 12.
Yeah.
He is not the caliber of quarterback that's going to lead us to the promised land. He's just not. So,
And he shouldn't be.
and
For our standard, he should
he's
not
not. He's not up to our standard. He's not up to the standard of what we'd established under Riley, and throughout the Stoops era, in different quarterbacks. He's just not. He's not Sam Bradford. He's not Jason White. He's not what we're looking for, and Jackson Arnold potentially is.
Yeah, and I think he did exactly what he was here for. I think he was a great placeholder from one regime into the next, and really helped steady what we want to be as a program. I mean, going 10-2 in the regular season last year, and getting to double digits after going 6-6 the year before is a big deal. Like, it's great, but it's not. Again, you live to a standard, and it's not there.
And the only devil's advocate I can play to this whole thing is if the coaching staff saw that the defense is so good that you only need a game manager at quarterback and not somebody to go win you games. You know that he's not going to turn the ball over because he's playing it safe. You know that he's not going to be scrambling crazy, taking hits because he's playing it safe, and that you just need a guy that can hand the ball off and can make the 7 to 20 yard throws because your defense is so good that you don't need a guy to win you games. That's the only scenario that I can see that, but it doesn't work when he plays a year and Arnold's gone and then Hawkins starts fresh.
That's my optimistic homer take in the whole thing, and that's where I look at the decision strategically that Brent Venables and everyone else is making, because that would be the safe and easy route to say, I'm relying on, if I'm Brent Venables, I'm confident in my defense and where the defense is getting. I just need a game manager who's going to keep me safe. He's not choosing that, and I really, really appreciate that and take a lot of optimism out of that he's saying, no, we're going to go for it, and we want excellence at both sides of the football, and we want a guy who's going to get us to where we want to be, and not just the guy who's going to keep us safe.
Yep.
I'm not going to rely on my defense to win it. I'm going to rely on my defense and my offense to be championship level eventually. And that's the decision I think they're making here, and I applaud it. I think it's really good. You can't look at it in a simplistic, let's just look at 2024, and we'll worry about 2025 when it gets here. That's not what a good head coach does. A good head coach thinks it through.
And if Dylan Gabriel goes to Oregon and wins the Heisman, it's not going to affect my decision on this today.
Agreed.
But if we kept Dylan Gabriel and say just somehow we won one more game than we would have, which you would never know, and then Jackson Arnold goes to Bama and wins a Heisman and a national championship, I would be sick to my stomach over that one way more than I would Dylan Gabriel winning a Heisman at Oregon.
And we think and I would say I think that's the more likely scenario.
I agree. Of
Jackson Arnold going out and shining. It's not like you're losing Brock Vandergriff, who's going to struggle to make playing time. Where is he, Kentucky now?
Yeah.
This is a totally different situation.
I can guarantee you the college football landscape from a coaching and transfer portal perspective, we're just hoping and praying Dylan Gabriel would stay.
Yeah.
Because of the opportunity that they would get to have.
I guarantee you the SEC is thinking that. They don't want OU to figure it out.
It would have been everyone's saying, oh, Jackson may have followed Levy to Mississippi State. No, he's at
Auburn
Bama,
or
Auburn,
Florida or
somewhere like that, who has a legit shot. Or I mean, even think about this:
A&M.
Jackson goes to Oregon, wins the Heisman, and wins the national championship. I mean, you can have it either way. So, and he's more likely to do it, in my opinion, than Gabriel is in his final year as a starting quarterback. Jackson's more likely
to me,
to do
it's
it
like,
the
and it's
years
from
that he would have
an
there.
expected value, looking forward perspective. We all sort of salivate at the idea that Manning somehow becomes the starter at Texas because we don't think very highly of him. And so to me, they would be looking at Dylan Gabriel in the same perspective, that they would be saying, yeah, at least we can take that off the board, that he's not the kind of guy that's going to destroy us on offense. Jackson Arnold, he's going to have his ups and his downs, a lot of volatility. His ceiling is higher. His potential is better. He's going to get us to a point where we can compete at a higher level than Dylan Gabriel ever could, and it's better to get him in now, and it sets us on a course that's better when you look at what happens this year, what happens next year, what happens the year after that. So,
what if Jackson went to USC?
oh my God,
and made them good?
Oh.
That'd be sickening too.
That's enough heart right there.
Let's not talk about that. Well, speaking of Texas, bringing up Manning, so they've had a number of injuries. Missouri's had some injuries. Texas, unfortunate for the kids, but strategically good for competitors, including OU. Their running back room is getting pretty thin, apparently. They've had two big losses at running back. Missouri had a big loss, and they don't have a lot of depth to replace. That was on the defensive line.
Their defensive end. Their Georgia transfer.
So you're looking at some weaknesses there. I don't want to make too much of any injury or any group of injuries, but it is changing the landscape competitively of what these teams can put on the field.
Yeah, C.J. Baxter for Texas filled in the second half of the season last year because their starter got injured, and he played very well. He was the number 1 5-star running back for the 2022 season, and I think they were going to rely on him quite a bit to be the bell cow football carrier for them. And he goes down with a season-ending injury. I believe it was another freshman that they had on the team that also had a season-ending injury. And I believe they only have 3 scholarship running backs right now, a walk-on, and they're talking about moving one of their best corners or something to running back. But I don't wish injury upon anybody. But from a football perspective, that's a big loss for a team like Texas.
Huge loss.
Being preseason number 4 in the country, second game of the year at Michigan, it puts a lot of pressure on what I believe is an average quarterback in Ewers.
I think so too.
It really might change the entire dynamic of their scheme.
Well, we look at, early season, it'll be the toughest time to replace a key position like running back, and to shine a little light on a post that I just had on our Two Homers site about why we should root against Texas among other teams. So you look at that Michigan game, we're all going to be rooting for the blue come Texas versus Michigan, second game of the season, and this is another reason to be a little more optimistic that Michigan can pull it off against Texas. If they can beat Texas, that weakens their resume a lot, which they may end up being the competition with us in getting into the playoff. So even if we're 9-3, our ability to get in the playoff is improved if Texas is not doing so well, and that would be really key to see them lose a game like that. And that's a tough game to win. Another is going to be, obviously, we go head-to-head against both of these teams, but Missouri as well, and they don't have a lot of depth. So they lose a really big potential star in the Georgia transfer there on the defensive line. That, to me, and maybe I'm the one who's naive, but I think my accusation is the people nationally, especially in Missouri, are very naive about how good Missouri actually can be. Their schedule is pretty weak, so they've got a lot of help there, but they have a lot to prove in terms of living up to the expectations they've built and what they can continue to say that they are.
It's very Texas-esque. I mean, they're the expectations that Missouri has built and that have been built for them nationally is based off one flash in the pan season that they're not used to having.
Ole Miss too.
And Ole Miss, and Ole Miss lives off their hailing of the transfer portal and the quote unquote talent they got there.
It's the proverbial hunted versus the hunter.
I will give Ole Miss more credit there just based off of track record and even head coach versus what Missouri has.
But Ole Miss they've still been a spoiler.
Yes,
Right?
exactly. I was
Ole
gonna
Miss
say
is
that,
a
yes.
spoiler.
Yes.
And now they're not seen as a spoiler right now
Right.
for this season.
Right.
So it's a whole different ball game
It is.
for how they're coached, the pressure on the players, the pressure from the boosters, the
The
pressure
weekend,
from the fans.
week in, week out. Yes.
Right. And
Missouri too.
Missouri's in the same boat. Like they kind of snuck up on everybody last year. They got a Division II running back that ended up leading the SEC in rushing, which just doesn't happen, right? That's just a flash in the pan thing for somebody. And they're only ranked where they're ranked because of schedule.
Yep.
So I think a lot of these preseason rankings aren't necessarily ranking them in terms of team talent. It's they don't want to look foolish.
If a team sneaks into a 9-3 record, and all of a sudden they have to be ranked that high.
Like OU's in that 16, 17, 18 range for most people because of the schedule. I don't think if they just sat there and looked at the roster that they would put them 16.
I don't know. We may be an outlier in that position. Just so the way the pundits talk and everything like that, it's...
Well, you look at what Joel
People-
Collette said, and I think he made really good points.
Yeah, he did make good points. And I like that video a lot. But people don't... The respect is not there. I mean, it's not.
No, and what he was saying was an outlier to what a lot of the national narrative has been. And I think he's recognizing the fact that a lot of people may wake up to, oh my goodness, Oklahoma is really good and really competitive. Now, we may be 9-3 really competitive, but we're still really good and really competitive. And in that national spotlight, because of that, in a way that sneaks up on people that just did not respect what we got, because they look at, oh, you lost your quarterback, you lost this, you lost that, and not realizing we're ascendant.
If we go 9-3 and sneak into the playoffs, whoever has to play us is not going to be happy they have to play us.
Where do we rank in terms of strength of schedule? Have they released that?
We've got to be up there pretty high.
I mean, it's got to be
It's
easily
top five. Yeah, it's top
Yeah, I
five.
think we're like
easily.
2.
I'd be surprised if it was,
I think Florida was 1.
Florida
had a really
plays
tough run.
Florida plays
Georgia,
just the
Bama,
most
Texas.
absurd schedule that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
They play
And
Alabama,
Georgia,
is it
Texas.
Georgia,
I don't know,
Texas,
they play everybody.
Tennessee,
They have 8 top 25
Tennessee.
matchups.
probably
Um,
Mississippi in that.
Somebody
Florida State.
Florida State, yeah. Which I'm not sold on Florida State,
I'm
but
not either.
but we'll see. But preseason, they're top. They're
They're like number 8.
number 8, yeah.
Somebody from Yahoo Sports was putting together they're trying to go back through at least recent history. I'm going to assume the last probably 2 decades maybe. I think Florida plays the number 1, 4, 6, 9, 11. The last 5 games of the year.
Oh,
That's just the last 5 games of the year.
oh, that's hard.
I can't imagine anyone's ever had to do that.
They play, you want the last 5 games of the year?
Yes.
Georgia, Texas.
Where are they at?
Where's the game at?
Home,
Yeah.
home Georgia.
Well, no, Florida, Georgia is neutral.
Neutral
Neutral.
site, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
At Texas, LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, at Florida State. That's their last 5 games against ranked opponents. So that's 1, 4, 13, 6, and 10.
And they play number 19 Miami to lead off the season,
Yeah.
and number 20 Texas A&M as their conference opener.
And they also have Tennessee on the schedule.
That's very tough.
And
At
UCF.
Tennessee.
And UCF.
That is pretty insane.
Yeah, that's a rough schedule.
I mean, their layup games, Samford and
Mississippi State.
Mississippi State should be.
Although Jeff Lebby's going to coach him up on that one.
So, from the Florida perspective, that's
You wanna
really
cry.
tough.
You wanna
You might be done before it's even begun.
Because you hate your head coach of Florida as well.
Uh-huh.
Like you don't like
Like,
Billy
do
Napier.
you think there's any chance whatsoever that the AD from Florida talked to SEC schedule makers and were like, let's see how hard we can get this thing. I want an easy out. I want an easy out for my coach.
There's no way that there was much conversation between Sankey and a lot of the 80s, in my opinion. Like, I can't imagine Joe Castiglione goes into a room, gets the schedule he gets, and be like, that's exactly what we wanted. Like, there's no way.
Well,
the
at
only
least they
person,
had-
the only person that's happy is Chris Del Conte.
Well, at least they
and
had
what
a
he gets.
quote formula for OU in Texas, which it's
Yeah,
hilarious.
What
to
did
me.
they have for Florida?
I was arguing with a Texas, or bantering with people on Twitter,
X.
about
Elon Musk?
No, it's still Twitter.
Oh, okay.
About the schedule and how much easier Texas's was and yada yada. And I'm like, well, you do understand that it was the last decade of your non-dominance is to why you got this schedule, right?
Right.
So it's not like this flex that you think it is.
Right.
You've sucked. So you're coming into the SEC with an easier schedule. Now, it might line up well for you. It might work out.
It might.
It might, right. But it's not some flex that you think it is.
Right. That, to me, that is such a parallel to Horns Down, and their aversion to that as if it's something that is unholy and we should, all be, shamed to do. It's like you're so weak that you think you deserve a weak schedule, and you're going to be proud of your weak schedule. I don't understand the softness at Texas. The lack of we go get it because we're Texas. If I were a Texas fan, I would be just continually embarrassed by how they position themselves in so many regards.
And see, the NFL, they want so much parity that your previous win-loss record totally affects your next season's schedule. And I don't know how the SEC does it. Like, I don't know what Florida did, whose feelings they hurt to get the schedule that they got. Because their record last year, they don't deserve
No.
to be getting what they're getting right now.
No.
It probably, my guess is...
And in someone like Missouri, it's the same way, right? They have an overinflated season, right, last year, and then they get to back that up with another one that's an easy schedule?
my guess is I'm not conspiratorial, at least not at that level. I think that Florida and Missouri lucked into what they got, that I do think there's some design, and I think the design is around teams that are the marquee teams like Alabama and Georgia, and they fill in the blanks after that. And it just happened to fill in the blanks like, well, here's the math, and we've got to have you play one of these teams, and we got to have you play another one of these teams, and you're just not in consideration. We're going to go into consideration of how do we position the top teams, and we got Oklahoma and Texas coming in. We got to have a formula for that. Okay, now we're left with what has to be the case.
Yeah, you're
mathematically,
backing
backing
into
into what it has
it.
to be.
Right.
And you're just
that's the need
not
for pods.
And you're not, huh?
That's the need for pods, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think going forward, that would be the key way of understanding. Well, one, it would build good regional matchups.
Yep.
So if we're in a pod with Texas and any of Arkansas, Texas A&M, Louisiana State, Missouri, did I say Arkansas?
Yeah.
Then you've got regional matchups that make sense. And you then go and you pick and you say, well, you're going to get to play these other teams on a regular basis, but we're going to rotate through them. And that's fan-friendly as well as conducive to everyone understands what's going on competition-wise. Yeah. And in the grand scheme of things, it should balance out and be pretty good. The position they may get themselves into is if Florida and South Carolina and both the Mississippi schools and Auburn just aren't very good, then you've got a weak and a strong, and you might have to say, what do we do about this?
Yeah, but that happens in the
it's
NFL.
going to happen. It's
That happens in
inevitable.
NFL.
It's inevitable.
Like, right, someone gets
right.
a weak division. That's our crossover games,
Well,
And
the Big
in
12
the
North and South were like that for years because the South was
So
OU,
much better.
Texas, A&M, and
Right.
OSU were all solid teams.
and even
Right.
Tech.
And then you had a decent Kansas State every now and then.
Nebraska, but they were fading.
Yeah.
Colorado, and they faded. Well, and in a 12-team playoff, it doesn't matter that much. Because really, if you're Oklahoma and you're saying, well, you made us play the toughest teams in the conference, that's okay. We're going to get credit for that. The quality win, quality loss metric that they use, we're going to get a lot of credit for that, I think, and be able to channel that into some consistent competitiveness to get into a college football playoff even with a relatively weak record, that you would have never thought you had a shot at a national title at 9-3. That actually will be the case going forward.
Could you imagine being Florida's coach, and let's just say that they go 4-4 against those 8 teams, and like, you got to go, dude. Like, you got to go. You only won 4 top 25 games this year. We need something better than this.
Well, one thing to note is we had talked on the previous pod about alternative uniforms, and we gave some of our commentary on it. And then lo and behold, Oklahoma powers that be came out, and obviously were listening to us, and they put out the next day. They said, you know what? These guys know what they're talking about, and they put out what I'm going to call an absolutely beautiful alternative uniform throwback to the 1950s. And not only that, they did the whole photo shoot to back it up, and that was just absolutely awesome. And I know for me, I'm a somewhat old-timer. I don't remember the Wilkinson area because I was not alive during that, and nobody else around was alive during that. But the fact that they can look back and they see that says so much about who we are in terms of our tradition, in terms of our staying power, that still resonates so much that they were able to recreate those images and do the side-by-side of Wilkinson with his crew leaning over the football, and now you see Brent Venables doing the same thing in the same shirt with the whistle around his neck. It's just awesome. And I love the fact that they are able to look at that continuity and say, here is 70 years of wonderful, tremendous football, and we're going to respect that and go all the way back to that era, because honestly, if they wanted to, they wouldn't have to play homage to that. They could forget about that because, sadly, a lot of those guys are too old to attend football games or they've passed on. And they're remembering the past, and that is just something that is really beautiful, and it's not something a lot of other teams can do. So I think it's really cool. I think those uniforms are going to be awesome. I hope for an away jersey that's going to match the home jersey that we're going to unveil on that first game.
You got to do it. You got to do the all whites with you got to do the 2009 Texas Tech.
With
those are, I mean, they're
stripe
incredible.
down the helmet.
And like, if we win that game, that uniform lives on in the lore that the 2002 against North Texas that we brought back just now.
Yeah, 2003.
2003.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'd be okay with that uni for like the Ole Miss game or something.
Oh my goodness.
And they also decided to retire the Rough Riders.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I wrote an article on the web page for that. Check it out.
And as much as I didn't like the Rough Riders, I think you made a good point about it was something that was there for us, whether we like it or not. It was there throughout a lot of memorable games and for a long time. I mean, it goes back to 2010, right? So
no, it was 2014.
Or 2014,
do you think it was a surprisingly good record in them, or do you think we strategically wore them for games we felt good about?
I don't think we strategically wore them in terms of games we felt good about. I think we wore them deliberately thinking about where they fell in the schedule.
The only time we intentionally wore them was the 2018 Big 12 Championship against Texas.
Well, I feel like we also
because
wore
we won in those, and
didn't we wear them like 3 or 4 times against West Virginia?
Yeah, we did.
No, they used to always be against West Virginia.
Yeah.
No matter home or away, it was
I think
always
some of that
against
was
West
they
Virginia.
were the newest team in the conference that wasn't a traditional rivalry type thing, so they didn't feel bad wearing an alternate uniform against a team that we didn't have a long-term record
I could see that
against.
thought process.
And we lost to them. We lost West Virginia in them one time, in 2022.
And some really good
We finished
victories.
14-4.
Some
Really-
of those
really good
victories were
victories.
just awesome. The away games against West Virginia, as much as it really, and you look back at those games, some of those games were just, if you were a coach or a fan who likes defense, man, did that leave a lot to be desired. But those offenses were just awesome.
Yeah, I mean the game against West Virginia in the snow where Baker goes off and Dede goes off. I mean
Yep.
I remember that very clearly. I mean,
Catches that ball and runs away from
I hated
everybody.
the uniforms, but we did have some great memories in them. I'm not sad at all to see them go. Something we haven't got confirmation on, and we probably won't until next year, is I really hope we keep these home alternates as some sort of permanent fixture in our home schedule. I think it's beneficial this year that we have 7 home games and you can rotate in 2 home alternates with the god-awful Unity jerseys that we wear. Look like Army out there with the name Unity on our back without actual last names. I hate them. I think
And numbers you can't
I
read.
think they're absolutely absurd and they're
So
so dumb.
So,
but
we, I think, are proponents of the 9-game SEC schedule in general. At least I am.
Yep.
The only downside to that I see, or one of the downsides, is that you lose that 7th game dependably at home, and you get that year in and year out if you don't have a neutral site, which we do, and I'm not going to advocate we change that with Texas. But it's really nice to have 7 home games. That's pretty awesome.
as a fan, it's
As
great.
a fan, that's really,
fan,
really
it's
cool.
incredible.
And if anybody should have one, it's teams like Oklahoma, right?
Now what's funny is for the 7-game home schedule that we have, over half of that, 4 of them are in the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
So a pretty light schedule at the back end, with Maine being one of the games. But I'm not going to complain. I mean, getting out to Owen Field 7 times a year is and maybe 8 with the playoff this year.
Yeah, we're gonna get the bye. We're gonna get the
We're getting
championship.
We're getting the bye. No 8th game in Norman, but
But if we do, boy, that'll be awesome.
yeah, no,
Let's end it on that comedy.
yeah, right.
Well, we got a lot coming up. We're going to talk about predictions. We got a lot of predictions to come up with, and we're going to have a special guest, hopefully, if we can get that arranged, coming up soon. So a lot of excitement as we build up to the home opener coming up soon. Until then, Boomer.
Sooner.